got an anonymous question here. How do we know Microsoft is not training their model on my data? This is a Copilot question. How can we be sure? Is there a way to verify?
Hold on. Christian, post-editing, can you put a twinkle in my eye? Wait, wrong eye.
Yeah.
Just trust us. No, the very first thing you need to do if you are find yourself asking this question is you need to go to aka.ms/responsible AI. And everything relating to Azure OpenAI and Copilot and how we use that data and what we're doing with that data, everything is documented there. That is the very first thing. And if you haven't had a chance to go look at it and you want to go to sleep tonight, I highly recommend pulling that up at about 8:05 and you'll be asleep by 8:10, but it's all there. The second piece of that is the way we bring Azure OpenAI to life is a key in understanding that. So we do not have an active large language model training on data, period. It is a static large language model. We basically, and I'll totally oversimplify this, take a copy of Azure OpenAI or of OpenAI at a time where we believe it is stable and brings enough benefit to change how we do things. And we take that copy and we put it over here in Azure and we say, turn it on. And that's it. So OpenAI is training a large language model. We are not. We are giving you, our customers, access to a version of that large language model, but it is static. It does not grow. It does not change. It does not learn new things. End of story. The only instance of us, there's two pieces I'll talk about. The only instance of us keeping even track of what you say is something we answered in another question, which is the chat history in Copilot, right? So the prompt and the response that's generated is tracked from a discoverability perspective, but not accessible by the large language model. In fact, you have to have explicit privileges to even be able to do the discovery to see all of that. The other thing that I'll comment on that is pretty much the time every time I talk to a customer about Copilot where they ask me this is in Outlook, there's an option to sound like me. So draft an email and make it sound like me. And that's the one where everyone's like, oh, you're learning how I talk. That's not what we're doing. We're literally taking a snapshot in time of the last small number, maybe 6 or 12 messages that you sent. And we're analyzing that for tone, for language choice, for how long or short it is. And then we're making it sound like those messages. And then we're scrapping that because, again, we're static. So if you do that a year from now, the sound like me is going to sound differently than the sound like me did today. And that's my soapbox.
That's why I'm slowly ramping up my my explicit language, my foul language, as a test of this capability over time. Doesn't sound like you, Christian. It's like, oh, if you've been emailing me lately,
yeah, it does today.
So in kind of our pre-discussion, we were talking about what you said makes sense, because storing 3 years of emails and creating a sounds like me around that's expensive and it is cumbersome. And why would Microsoft want to keep accumulating stuff? I don't know about you, but my name is Shari. I'm a digital hoarder. I have a lot of garbage that I need to get rid of on my network, on my external drives. There's no reason to keep all that stuff around if it doesn't benefit the people. But I do want to make one distinction, because everything is called Copilot right now. And I just did a session. I know, it's like Viva, Viva, Viva all over again. The session I did this last weekend in Minnesota was on Copilot, and I could not get an environment that had Copilot so that my participants could actually use it hands-on. So I went out to Edge, and Edge has a Copilot too. So keep in mind, once you take your data outside of the tenant and you put it on Edge, which is a public browser.
Ooh, yeah.
that is a problem. And it could, I'm a recovering HR professional. I don't like firing people for doing stupid things because they don't know. But that good people will do bad things for, without, because they don't realize it. Bad things will do bad. Bad people will do bad things no matter what.
What's confusing there is that the fact that when you're talking about Bing search, and Bing search, if you're logged in, then can leverage things about you personally and to be able to go and add that on. So the danger then is then talking about proprietary things, work related content in that Bing Edge experience.
Yep.
That you're then feeding. It's the consumer version of that technology where you are training the cloud. So you have to remember the difference between Copilot in the enterprise versus Copilot powered, and this is a branding problem of like the Bing the Edge experience.
We would never have a branding problem.
I know. I'm just saying theoretically.
Yes.
Yeah, no, so and this kind of goes back to like a fundamental around all this, the AI technology is you need to understand the fundamentals of how it works to understand the distinction between the two.
Right.
Because sometimes people initially were going and looking at, I'm doing a side-by-side comparison of asking the question in Chat GPT versus in Copilot and getting very different responses and speed at which, right. For what everything that Jay described is because the data set is different. Mm-hmm. It's how it's leveraging that. It's one of the reasons why I was very excited about the ability to go in and create like a personal, like a SharePoint Copilot where only I had access. I was experimenting. I don't think I've talked to either of you about this, but I was putting my financial data in a SharePoint site and going and querying and looking at it. So I was using that as a test. I was taking my bank statements and credit card statements and dumping it in there and asking questions across these different accounts and adding these PDFs and pulling the information in there and doing it. So I get some insights, and there's some cool things that I was able to go and do. And I'm not going to share any of that. And it's not training my organization on any of that. Only I have access to that SharePoint environment. It's why I did it there. I would never go dump that into Chat GPT or out into Copilot through Bing.
Did it out you for your soda, your flavored soda obsession?
No, because I made sure that it anonymized that data to not show. It's like watching a naughty movie in a hotel room. It obscures the language of the soda pop vendors.
None of us would know what that's like, Christian.
Yeah.
I've seen it in movies, Jay.
From movies, yes.
Yeah.
He plays one on TV.
So it's look, there's always gonna. It's funny. I had a conversation with Jeff Teeper a few years back where we were talking about how long it took for people to trust moving their data to the cloud.
Right.
And we're going through a similar motion with AI around this. Part of it is understanding. And he made the comment where he said it wasn't until like 2016, 2017 where he felt like finally the majority of people had trust in the cloud, realized that, hey, it was actually these vendors, these cloud vendors are more secure and able to do more protection than I'm able to do on-prem with my own servers and keep that maintained.
Right.
And so talk about that journey. Like I was having some of these conversations, like I was working for a startup back in 2001 where we were trying to convince companies to move over to a secure private cloud environment. And so I saw like the pushback in 2001 all the way up through like the same time period. I agree with him about the timing of that.
Yeah.
And so I think there's parallels with Copilot. People need to understand. I think it'll be a quicker adoption, acceptance of that, but it needs to come with understanding.
Yep.
Yeah, I did a lot of events for the 3-letter agencies, buildings that did not have signage on them. Mm-hmm. That I'm like, my last known coordinates are these, should I disappear? Because it was very ominous. And when people are like, it's not secure, I'm like, I can tell you for a fact, the highest level of our government uses the Microsoft cloud. And so therefore it has to be secure. And that's because I walked into those buildings and I came back out.
Yeah.
I lived to tell the tale.
Yeah.
So.
I live just down the street. There are 2 of those facilities that most people like. What are those buildings? Like, oh yeah.
You're like,
I believe they're NSA buildings. Yeah.
There was a little while where Google Maps listed the building behind the Safeway near me as a 3-letter agency. Like it said the 3-letter agency. I'm like, that's weird. You shouldn't do that.
So somebody had tagged it in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times.